spent some time together in the league, and you know, I've known all these other guys forever. I've recruited a few guys from the man a little bit to my right. I've recruited a lot of your players over the years, and like all of you, I've had a lot of bad things written about me from McCabe, so we can all throw stuff at him later on. You got to put one poison pen in the group here to make this right, but you know, I just say that it's different. You know, when I first became an ass assistant, as Judd Heathcote used to call me, heavy on the ass, my first trip was to Detroit. The first day I got the job, I came down to a place called Franklin Settlement, and yeah, some of you know where that is. You know where that is. And I came down to look at Eric Wilson, the 7-footer that ended up going to Minnesota, and happened to find my first recruit, and that was Steve Smith from Pershing. And Smitty was about 6'5", 155, 60 pounds soaking wet, you know, and turned out to be not only one of the great players at our place, but one of the greatest people at our place, and what he's done, not only there, but everywhere else. And I'd have to say that I think basketball was really, really good then. I mean, you wouldn't go to games to see players that could play in the Big Ten or ACC. You'd go to games and you'd see pros. I mean, those were bona fide pros. And we've gone through a lot in this state, you know, with all the hardships that we've gone through. But I think, in all honesty, Tim, it's starting to really come back. I think there's some great coaches. You had your hands filled with the Harry Hairstons and Johnnies and all the people that were here then. There was a core of coaches that, man, my first couple times coming to Detroit and watching those games and watching the way those guys got after it, Ruben and all of you, it was eye-opening to me. But it was, I hope those days come back, because I think that's what it was all about, people holding people accountable, a lot of great players. We took care of our youth. They spent time, they drove them all around. There's so much given, and I just appreciate all of you in here, because I had enough guys in here that I maintained my contract, and my wife and my life has been a better place, and a lot of it's due to a lot of great players from Detroit.
Thanks, Coach. Also, before we move on, I want to recognize Steve Hall. Very impressive, and congratulations on your award. I didn't know you got all that done. That's pretty impressive, so congratulations. Thanks, Steve. Coach Kampe, so you spent last year on the ad hoc committee talking about the landscape of college basketball, and you and Coach Izzo provided a report to the Rice Commission about some of the changes. I know we've talked about it. We're not sure how it's going to play out. Can you share with us your perspective on what you learned during that process?
Yeah, Tom and I there were 15 coaches that were put on the ad hoc committee of the NABC, which is the National Basketball Coaches Association, which is dictating to you guys what's going to, all these changes that nobody really knows what's going to happen. And we spent hours upon hours trying to educate a lot of people that just wanted to end summer recruiting. When our first phone call, our first meeting was, there will be no summer recruiting anymore. And how can we get to a point where we can get it back? And so through a lot of discussion, you know, I got to listen to a lot of really, really great coaches in this group bear their hearts out to what we really are about. And I think we got to the Rice Commission. I played golf at a golf course in California called Cypress Point, which, by the way, is the best golf course I've ever played in my life, and they say it's the best in the world, and if you ever get a chance to play it, play it. But on the fourth hole, they said they drove out and said you have to step to the side for 20 minutes because a member's coming through. And it was Condoleezza Rice. So I played in the group behind her the rest of the way, and then at lunch, we went in and she was there at lunch, and I got to talk to her, and I got to face-to-face 20 minutes with her about the commission, and I found out that she had a godson who played AAU basketball for the Oakland Soldiers, And that's why she had such a problem with summer basketball. So I think people like Tom and Calipari and Mark Few and Hawkins and people who really know the game were able to step forward and make some changes. And the NABC did a wonderful job through this committee in getting summer basketball. Now the problem for all of you right now is we have no idea what it's going to be like. And I've gotten a lot of phone calls because I've tried to help Dan in the state of Michigan wade through this new idea of we wanted the coaches' hands back on the game. And the way to do that was to let coaches come out in the summer and see you working with your team. Right now I have a team camp, many of you know that, but I had 4 players in my team camp a year ago that signed with Michigan State, but while they were at my team camp, his staff couldn't come down and watch him. But we could go to California to watch him play in AAU basketball. So we wanted something with the high school coaches. And that's how these 2 weekends came about. Now, they wanted to rush it and get it in, so we didn't give the states a chance to really figure out how to do it. Because how do you do that? How do you have a team camp? How do you let every player in the state be involved in the team camp? How do you run a team camp when the most you can charge is $200 per team, and not lose $20,000, $30,000 on it, which your Michigan Basketball Association can't do. So what's happened is we're going to go through these first 2 weeks, and then Jim Haney, who is the head of the NABC, is going to get the committee back together and look on how we can fix it, because there's going to be a lot of problems. There's just a ton of them are going to happen. So we know that, but we had to rush through this and do it. So many of you are upset with this, and I understand that. I've gotten the phone calls. Don't be upset at the state of Michigan, all right? Be upset at what's happened, and then let's fix it together, because as college coaches, we want to see your kids. And not one of us sitting here, and I read DJ said this about you the other day, I think everybody sitting here would say, if I can have 13 players on my team that are all from Michigan, I'd be the happiest coach there is. And that's what we want. We want to see your players. We want your players playing for us. I too, I'm old, so what he said is we used to go watch pros. Now if they're going to be pros, they're playing at a prep school in California or something like that. We don't want to fly to California to watch a Michigan kid play. We want to do everything we can to help you guys keep these kids here in the state.
Thanks, Coach. Coach Murphy, Michigan high school basketball is strong when Detroit is strong. You're a lifelong Detroit guy. You coached in the PSL. What is the state of high school basketball in Detroit now? Players are leaving or transferring to other schools. In some ways it can be chaotic. Can you share a little bit about your thoughts on Detroit basketball at this point?
Well, I think Detroit basketball is in great shape. Throughout the years, I believe from when I was playing, as Coach Izzo alluded to and Coach Kampe, there were a lot of pros, there were a lot of coaches, long-term coaches, committed coaches in place for over a span of probably 15 to 20 years that really understood the landscape of teaching, academics, and recruiting. As we continue to get older and our game evolves, I think more kids have elected to migrate to other states. And I think more importantly for us, because the guys on this panel here, outside of Coach Izzo, we're all at mid-major schools. And when it comes to the state of Michigan or Detroit basketball, I think it's in pretty good shape. But I think everybody in this era wants instant gratification, or they want a higher school, so to speak. So when we come down and see the best kids, their dream school, and ultimately what they want is Michigan and Michigan State. And that's understood. Everybody wants the highest level and the prettiest girl, it's like I like to call it. But When you don't get that, opposed to coaches advising, maybe Eastern Michigan, Central, Western, University of Detroit are great situations and great opportunities. They continue to look at Big Ten schools, Atlantic 10 schools, and schools that are a little bit higher. And again, not to go off into the transfer rate, but if you look at the portal, it's 700 transfers in that portal from kids at the Division I level that are transferring this year. And I think it goes back to the decisions that are being made with kids coming out of high school. I think us as coaches together need to give the kids the better advice, not what we think is best or looks the best, but the best situation for the kid. I've been at Eastern Michigan for 8 years. I've had one Detroit kid on my roster in 8 years, and I'm a Michigan school. So I get beat up for that. I get guys that ask me why I don't come down to Detroit to recruit. Throughout my lifetime, being born and raised here in Detroit, I've done everything in my power to recruit Detroit and recruit the state of Michigan. I know I'm in a battle with the guys on this stage, but at the same time, when I come back, guys always want what's better or what they think is better, opposed to just picking a great situation and supporting the in-state schools. Coach Kampe just alluded to, we want the Detroit kids and we want our kids, our rosters filled with Michigan student athletes. That would be great, but that's just not the reality with the state of how everybody handles recruiting. For me, I'm gonna continue to recruit Detroit, I'm gonna continue to recruit the state, but if you look at my roster the past 2 years, we've had guys from Louisiana, Baltimore, Maryland, Atlanta, Georgia, Indiana, California, and I just ask you guys, Michigan, Detroit, whomever, when I walk into your gym or when the gentlemen that are sitting on this stage walk into your gym, give us an honest chance. Give us an opportunity to really recruit your kids, allow them to have an education in-state at our great institutions, and we'll do a great job of continuing to develop them. So if that answers that in a nutshell.
Thanks, Coach. Coach Davis, can you talk a little bit about the impact of social media on your recruiting, on your players, on the way that you interact with them?
Well, I think, it starts off, with the social media and how it affects us. We start in the recruiting process with being able, the young men that we're recruiting, to be able to go through all the platforms. And what we're doing is we're trying to read, we're trying to understand the makeup of that student athlete. How can we connect with him? What's important with him as we try to recruit him? Now, during that process, it's easy for us to automatically be able to weed out some of the players. When all of a sudden you see some of the comments they make, some of the retweets or the likes that they might have. We have so many different kids that we're trying to evaluate, and we're trying to separate one player from the next. It's easy when we've got a 4-star player versus a 1-star, but to not make mistakes, we have to make sure that, we're trying to bring in the best player that we can. But more important than finding the very best player is not bringing in the player that's going to hurt our program. And I think what you can do is you can be able to look through their social media, and even stuff that they've posted or put out there, it's not too late for them to take some of that stuff down, because that's going to hurt them with scholarship opportunities, college opportunities, professional opportunities. And then when they get to our program, we try to do the same thing. It's not that all of a sudden they've got it understood of what they have to do. They make mistakes. They're young men that make mistakes when they make mistakes at night. They make mistakes on the court. They make mistakes with social media. But it's our job to be able to try to educate them with how important that is, and not just ignore the social media aspect that we didn't have to deal with 10 or 15 years ago. I think we're moving in the right direction. I think our guys are understanding. I don't think you're seeing as many things, but some of the stuff that you do see out does have an impact, and it impacts their future. And I think we can all do our part to make a positive impact.
Thank you. And before we go on, do any of the other coaches have any comments on social media, or should we keep on going? Keep going first. Okay. Thank you. Coach Davis, I was really impressed and inspired by your son this year. He became the Horizon Freshman of the Year, and I know from past conversations 5 years ago, he was about 130 pounds, and the skill development was something that you guys shared. For the coaches that want to develop their players, what advice would you have? What did the workouts with your son look like over the last 5 years?
Well, first of all, thank you for the invitation here tonight. My son, 5 years ago, didn't really like basketball. And so I always hear about you have to have passion for something. And that's really not true. You can have passion for something that you're not good at, and you cannot like something that you have a skill that is built, and built you can be really good. And so what I did as a parent, we all see what our kids are good at. And from a basketball standpoint, he was better than football, baseball, soccer, so we want our kids to play sports. And I always heard it is 80% mental. And when you hear that, how do you work on the mental part of anything? And so if it's 80% is mental, then I just believe that you have to spend more time in that area. And so what I did with him, starting 5 years ago, I homeschooled him. I put him in John Lucas, who is one of the toughest coaches that you ever face, because I want him to be like pushed every single day. And I read something that really kind of caught my attention. It was like, what are you doing? Now, what can you say you do that no one else is doing? And I asked myself that question. And so what we did was we would get up every morning, 5 o'clock. We shot 60,000 shots in 12 days. One day we shot 10,000 shots in a 24-hour period. And my part about the passion was that even if you don't have passion for something, but if you're doing it right, and I never let him overlook any technique of anything that we did. And I pushed him, and he just started liking basketball this year when he had some success. Coach Kampe was believe it or not, the first school to recruit him and offer him a scholarship. Coach Izzo doesn't know this, but my son used to practice against my team in Texas Southern. And when we came to play Michigan State, the first time, I introduced him to Coach Izzo. And when we walked away, he said, "Dad, he didn't even offer me a scholarship." And so, but my point was that he was Michigan State bound. If Coach had said, "Come walk on," he would have walked on. And if Coach Kampe wouldn't got sick on his recruiting trip to, was it Peach Jam? I think it was Peach Jam. He'd probably be in Oakland playing right now.
Oh, wow.
But I pushed him really, really hard. And for all you coaches that have players, what you have to understand is you control your ability. You control it. So if you control your ability in anything that you do, forget the passion, forget I love it. If you're not obsessed with it, forget love. And so I'm obsessed with it. And so what I did was I made him do everything, every drill the right way. We just started speaking this year.
Wow.
I'm serious. He just started liking his daddy this year. And last week I almost put his name in the transfer portal. I came this close. Because I asked him to shoot 3,000 shots, he only wanted to shoot 1,000. So I was upset about that. But seriously, push your players, forget the love. Make them do everything the right way, never overlook any technique of anything. And he had a lot of success this year because of that.
Wow, that was big.
Thank you. Coach Hawkins, you've shared a lot about the landscape of college basketball in relation to AAU, shoe companies, agents, all the outside influences. And also you brought up something interesting about the international effect, that with practice limitations and restrictions, can you share some of your thoughts on the challenges that coaches are facing today because of that?
Yeah, sure. I had a chance to talk with Tom a little bit, Hersey, before we met here. And then hearing Coach Izzo and Coach Kampe talk a little bit about their experience on the committee. Bottom line is we need to get you all more time with the players, with the student athletes. We need more time. It's basketball, the court, the football field, whatever it is, it's the most important classroom that these kids have. Okay, we can teach math, we can teach science, we can teach all those things, and it's really important. But what they get on our courts and on the football fields, whatever it may be, is they get to learn something that they don't get in the other areas, and that's how to compete. Okay, we're the only classroom that teaches them how to compete, yet I think most of us in here would agree that may be the most important thing you need to succeed in life, is to understand how to compete. When I talked with Tim a little bit about tonight, I was struck. We have 2 Canadians on our team, and we have a kid from Africa on our team. And I went up to watch a kid in Toronto play, a really good player. And I watched him last spring. And when I watched him, he had worked out in the morning. They played a game in the afternoon. When they got done playing the game, I was there with an assistant coach from Maryland, and we were watching. The 2 coaches came over to us and said, "Coach, if you don't mind, we'd like to play another half." I was, "Sure, why not?" So we stood there and watched them play another half of basketball for us. And then later on that evening, the kid came back with his coach, and they don't do it with high schools there. You know, it's all club. And when they came back and he came back and worked out again later on that evening. So we worked out in the morning. He played a game and a half that afternoon, and then he turned around and worked out again that evening, all of which was with his coach. When we talk about what we're doing now and what this is going to look like, and we don't know what it's going to look like, the recruiting model, the issue that I have is the NCAA, the NABC, they all want to turn it back into your hands, and rightfully so. At the same time, you all have limitations. And from BCAM, from your high school federations, no matter what state it is, we're telling you, what day you get to start to work with your kids. So you get to start to work with your kids on whatever day, and you have so many hours. Our 2 Canadian kids got to us and said, "What do you mean you can only work with us for 4 hours a week?" And it didn't make any sense to them because they had been working with so many people, or so many hours. So we're going to turn it back into your hands, and what we've done is by telling parents and kids that you can only start to work with your guys on whatever day, June, whatever it is, okay, is we are indirectly telling them, your coaches, you guys cannot be trusted. If we put it in your hands, you will overwork the kids. And that is absolute insanity, obviously. So we have to continue, I think, to fight for more time with the kids, not less time with the kids. When we get into the AAU world, which we talked about, if they don't spend time with you, then who do they spend time with? Who has no hours limitations with the kids? You all have hours limitations. You have days limitations. They do not. And so I really encourage you, as we continue to move forward, to continue to fight for time. As much as anything else, fight for time, because you're the influences that these kids need to have. You're in their daily lives. You see what's going on in the schools. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Good, thank you. So round 1 of the questioning is done, and we have 2 ladies with microphones. If you have a question or want to make your way over, I'll recognize you. Coach Izzo, as I watched the NCAA tournament, one of my favorite teams all year was Buffalo. And when I watched what Texas Tech did to them, my first thought was Michigan is going to be in big trouble. When you watch them, when you reflect on the game, what did you learn? Because the game keeps evolving. What did Texas Tech do different than other people? Maybe that the coaches that are trying to implement a defensive system next year that they can. What were your thoughts on Texas Tech?
Well, when I watched them against Buffalo and I talked to those guys, I watched them against Michigan, I talked to those guys, I thought we were in trouble too because of numbers a little bit, but we've gotten blamed a few times about having a football team on hardwood. They had a Super Bowl team on hardwood, they kept bringing guys off the bench, 6'4", 6'5", they were like linebackers, and Chris did a great job with them. I mean, they weren't your typical team either. They weren't a great three-point shooting team, although the one kid really shot well against us, but they were as tough a team as we played, and I think in the Big Ten, you play a lot of tough teams. But I said, watching that game made me think back as I look out at this audience, because still, as Coach Hawk said, you know, my greatest times when I was at Michigan State is when you could come down to St. Cecilia and sit in that sweaty gym, Coach Washington at the door, and watch all you guys, Murph, you were one of them, fighting with each other and players getting after it. And I mean, those were the good days. That team reminded me of those days. I mean, they were just fist fighters, they were tough, they were pretty skilled, and I don't know if that could happen. Now, the one thing they had that none of us have, he had 4 grad transfers. I think 2 of the guys are turning 24 and 2 23. So it was a very old team, and a very mature team, and a very good team, and they handled both the Michigan teams pretty good.
All right, thank you. Coach Kampe and I go back to 1979. I was a senior in high school, and he was a coach at Toledo. And for the last 40 years, I've always been so impressed with the honesty and candor that you have with recruits, with your players. He doesn't mince any words, and I think that's refreshing today, because a lot of times recruits will go elsewhere. On my son Kellen's visit, Greg actually told me, he said, you know, if Kellen comes to school and plays with me, you know we'll never be friends again. And that's the kind of honesty he brings. Can you talk a little bit about how kids and parents have unfair expectations and the value of being honest?
Well, he was my first no. Had a lot of no's since. I think that, you know, the two of us are from a different era, and I think that we struggle a little bit with the new era. And the one thing that I will do and I believe in is that I'm going to tell you the truth. And I'm going to tell my players the truth. I'll give you an example. We have a player that's going to, you know, he just said that about the grad transfers. Well, what that is killing us, all right? Because I think we're going to put Toledo Mud Hens on our uniform instead of Oakland next year, because we're going to be the AAA school for college basketball. You know, maybe we should be Lakeland and be the single A. I don't know, but it's just changed. And this is a bad time for me to be talking about this, because in the last 72 hours I had a team next year that I think's not only an NCAA tournament level team, but a team that can win games in the tournament. And we lost 2 players, one to a grad transfer and another who had no scholarship offers but us wants something better after playing 40 minutes a game for us. So all these people are telling this kid, this my grad transfer, that he's a pro, and that, you know, if you're going to be a pro, you got to play in the Big Ten, you got to play in the ACC or whatever. And I called him in. I said, well, in your 4 years here, the first 2 years you sat behind 2 pros, Kay Felder and Kendrick Nunn, who both played in the NBA. So how can you not get there from here? Well, everybody's telling me I need to do this. And so I just looked at him, I told him the truth. He didn't want to hear the truth, but mom and dad aren't telling him the truth. All the people around him aren't telling the truth. I said, Javen, you're not a pro. He didn't want to hear that. But I think we gotta tell the truth. I mean, I think as coaches, if you can't tell the truth to your kids, if you gotta tell them what they want to hear, I don't know if it's worth the business, you know? And I don't know, would you agree that that's one of the biggest differences between today and 1979? That, you know, when my dad, who was a high school coach, when I came home and bitched, told me, you do exactly what that coach tells you to do. And if I didn't, it was my ass, all right? And today, you know, I mean, you yell at a kid and point your finger at him, and all hell breaks loose, doesn't it? You know what I'm saying? That was the best thing that could ever happen to that kid. And by the way, I don't think you get to the Final Four if that kid doesn't play the way he did. And somebody coached his ass off, all right? But today, you know, what makes me mad is I wish I was playing in the tournament, but I'm laying on a couch like you guys watching these talking heads and these ex-players, and they're saying they wouldn't take that. Well, you probably weren't good enough to play for him. Of course you, but if you were, you would take that, you know? Because this guy's out there coaching, making you a human being that's gonna be successful in life. And that's the big difference. So I'm getting on a soapbox. I probably shouldn't have done that. But...
Important topic. Do you guys want to add anything? Anything?
You know what I think is, like I said, I know most of the guys in this room, and you know, Horatio, just for an example, you know, helped one of my kids a lot, and I think what they don't realize is how much we do care about the kids. You know, I got in a big argument because I come back and, you know, I can share it in here because I really don't care anymore. But I come back and, you know, first thing I did is I called the kid's dad. And he played football, he's a big fella. And he said, "What are you calling me for?" I said, "I'm just checking to make sure everything's okay." So I dropped my kid out there. I told you that he's got to get a little more active. He can be lazy at times. It's your job to change him. Don't call me till the job's done. I said, "Thanks, James." Final Four, I said, "James, you okay?" He said, "The job's partly done. Finish these games, and then let's get after it next year." You know, there's so many of you guys. I mean, I think, you know, when I worked for Judd Heathcote, people in the city would say, "Well, I can't play for him. You know, he's too tough." And then I came down and I watched Ben Kelso go after somebody, Harry Hurston go after somebody, Johnny Golston go after everybody. You know, Ruben, you weren't exactly a piece of cake either, you know, and I'm watching all these guys, and then I watch some of the younger guys, George, that are, you know, demanding too. Does anybody realize that our job is to win championships? All of us. You know, Mike, I was at the game when his team won and got to a Final Four, and you know, Murph's been very successful. I mean, all these guys have been successful at different levels, different opportunities, but it's hard. I've been a Division II guy too. And do you realize that, you know, Tim's been there. He's been a pro. To get there, you gotta be like, definitely in the upper 1% of everybody who plays basketball, maybe less. So I don't know how you think you're gonna get there without it being hard. And there's gonna be demands. And I think we live in an unrealistic world that everybody takes things so personal. But if I could say one thing that I think has saved my butt, because I get myself in a lot of stuff. If you ask me what I did best, I would say one thing I did best. I spent an awful lot of time with my guys. And I mean, it's 10 o'clock at night, it's 3 o'clock in the morning coming back from Iowa, and somebody had a bad game, we're riding around. And when you spend time with your guys, that gives you a license, because they know what you want and you know what they want. And if I could say this, I give them a sheet every year, give me 5 things you want to accomplish. And they write them down. Some, your guy, Maurice Sager, wanted to be a pro, wanted to be this, wanted to be that. But you know what he wanted to be? One of his 5 was, I want to keep my religious values. You know, and that's because he was afraid I'd show it to his mother and she'd kill him, right? But it was pretty interesting. I've had a couple guy, Chris Hill, who works here now in Detroit, wanted to be an academic All-American, which he was. And when they put the 5 down, I always say, "So have you ever done this?" "No." And I say, "Well, do you know how much roadkill there's going to be to accomplish hanging your jersey from the rafter, winning a national championship, playing in the NBA? Do you know how difficult that's going to be?" Because they're under the impression, because of some of the things that go on in the summer, I think, that aren't as good for you guys, that it's just easy. It's a rite of passage. You know, I'm going to play basketball, I'm gonna play basketball in high school, I'm gonna play basketball in college, I'm gonna be a pro. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. And so I would say, find a way that's right for you, but if you don't hold them accountable, we don't have much chance. And I know all these guys. I mean, I know Mike when he was at Indiana. Mike's a competitive guy, and he didn't tell you that he came up there and beat our butt that year. And if your son is in the transfer portal, I'll make you that offer right now. So let's work a deal here, Michael. We get this done quick, but recruiting at its best nowadays, right, guys? Right from the portal.
Very good.
All right, we've got 20 minutes left. If you have a question, we've got the ladies with the microphones. Coach Murphy, before we take their question, you were with Coach Boeheim, and you're one of the best zone coaches. I think zone is underutilized in college basketball. What advice would you have for the coaches on why they should play more zone defense? And we'll get to those questions as soon as he's done.
Well, I've been a defensive guy all my life. Obviously, that's where I hang my hat. I was a man-to-man guy, obviously, in high school. When I played in college, it was all man-to-man. We coached and taught man-to-man at Central High School, Crockett High School, private state championship programs, and then again at Kent State University. So when I went along to Syracuse, obviously, it was a great opportunity and it would be a great experience. And I truly didn't believe in zone. It took me probably through the first year, and we were like 27-4. And I said, damn, this works pretty good. We weren't a very talented team, but it took me time to understand the philosophy and the nuances behind it. Me, I'm a defensive guy. I can teach man-to-man, I can teach zone. I believe in it because I saw it work for 7 years. We recruit to it, athletic guys with a lot of length, very quick. For me, zone, obviously we have something, before we even get in our zone, it's called 3-second drill. We have to have 5 guys back to protect the basket, to take away transition points. So we believe if we can take 15 to 20 transition points off the board and force you to score against our zone half court, we'll be in great shape. Now within the zone in a half court set, you take away immediate penetration, you take away someone's best post-up player right away, and it causes any team to think for 40 minutes. Any coach up here tell you that it's very difficult to score against. I've played these guys and we played it throughout the country. I've been at Eastern Michigan, this is my 8th year, all right, going into year 9. 6 out of 8 years, we've been #1 in our conference in defensive field goal percentage. We've had 2 defensive player of the years in our first 8 years. We've been #1 in the country overall, which we received a plaque for being the #1 defensive team in the country in 2014. So for us, it's just a continued belief on that side of the ball. I think whatever you're doing, you should believe in it. If you're a man-to-man coach, you teach it, you preach it, you break it down. We play zone, but we teach it and preach it every day. We have drills for our guards, drills for our forwards, and drills for our centers. So we have a 3-segment breakdown where we do it individually, and then we come together with our forwards and our centers, then we bring the whole team together and we work on it for another 15 to 20 minutes, going against live actions. So for me, I just believe in it. I had a great experience from a Hall of Fame coach who believed in it. It's 3 of us in the country that play zone. Coach Boeheim has been a head coach at Syracuse. I think he's going into year 45. I'm going into year number 9, and Coach Hawkins, who was an assistant with Coach Boeheim, took a job in the Pac-10 at Washington, and in his first 2 years, he's been back-to-back Coach of the Years, and he's won the Pac-10, and he plays 40 minutes of zone. But I believe it's a continued belief, and it's the way we teach it, and we believe in it. So if that answers your question, if anybody has any other questions about zone, I know we're going to questions, you can feel free to ask now.
We have a question up front.
I have a question for Coach Davis. Coach of the Year, Sean Hill. Coach at Pershing this year, he coached 2 of his sons. And I wanted you to speak a little bit about coaching your own son and some of the things that go into that.
Well, first of all, my assistant coach here, Coach Dillard, can tell you Coach Izzo. I was going to put him in the transfer portal. I can tell you. Coaching his son is difficult at times because, especially for my boy, he had to shoot a lot this year for us. We wasn't very good. And so you always hear about him taking shots. But my philosophy has always been my top 3 guys has a green light. You know, and so if my top 3 guys, if he wasn't my son, he would still be shooting. I coach Trey Jefferson, Bracer Wright, Robert Vaden, and all those guys. But sometimes you hear those things, and then in the games, I just felt like as a coach, I always protected my best player, and so I felt like he got fouled a lot this year, and he was, I think, number 2 in scoring, and it was 54 of the top 55 players shot more free throws than him, and but it's very difficult to coach his son, but then it's easy to coach him when you know they're gonna work. He's gonna work, and I've worked on his mental for, like I said, 5 years, and he doesn't care if you go 1 for 11 or 10 for 12, as long as you shoot the basketball the right way. And so as a coach, you have to push him, and as a parent, you have to push him as well. So I've heard a lot of things, and I think from a recruit standpoint now, we have a lot of players that want to play with him, and we have a lot of players that don't want to play with him. But that's a part of it. And as you look around every team that plays, James Harden for Houston, Damon Lillard, all those guys, everybody got 2 players on their team that shoot the basketball. And so it's never going to be an equal opportunity for me. Matter of fact, I had one game I told him, if you pass it again, I'm taking you out, you know. But he had 48 points in one game and then take a shot the last 6 minutes of the game. And so he doesn't want to shoot the shots he shoot this year. We're going to try to bring in 4 or 5 fifth-year guys to play with him. And so our team will be a lot better, and he can average just as many points taking 15 shots as he did this year. But to answer your question, it's only tough if you want it to be tough. You know, if they work the way they're supposed to work, they put the time in, then no matter what his name is, you want them to take your shots.
Questions from the audience?
How you guys doing? I want to thank Horatio for having all these coaches out tonight. We appreciate you. As a Division II coach the last 3 years, I've had an opportunity to watch some great high school coaches. A lot of them are in this room. If I miss your name, I apologize. Ken Flowers, Keith Guy, Ramsey Nichols, George Ward, Ron Brickman, Steve Hall, Lamonte Stone, to name a few. I want to know, when you guys have opportunities for openings on your staff, are these guys considered? And what do we have to do to be candidates to be on your jobs when you have openings?
That's big.
Coach Hawkins?
Yes, we've had some, you know, through the years. When we talk about the PSL, I don't know, Camp might have passed us, but for the longest time, we've had more Detroit PSL kids at Western in my tenure than any other time. We go back, Cornell Mann was an assistant for me. Bakari Alexander was an assistant for me. Harold Baber, going all the way back, played for Coach Kampe, was an assistant for me as well. And so the development, the personal development, and this goes back a little bit, I think, to what Camp was talking about too, with camps and getting to know people. I worked Coach Wooden's camps forever. I think everybody in here probably got their jobs by who they know as much as what they know. And so getting to know people on a personal level is something that's really important. One of the things that I just mentioned real quick to that, because Coach Izzo, I've got Thomas Kelly right now on my staff at Western from the west side of the state, who played for Coach Izzo on his first Final Four team. And one of the things Coach and I talked about is you got to remember there's a part of what we do that is certainly obvious. You got to produce. You also got to remember we need to want to spend time with you too. If we're going to be stuck in a car driving for 4 hours to watch a kid play, that's got to be a decent experience between us. And so the personalities that go back and forth between everybody, that relationship is I think really important. And getting to know people, events like this, camps, socializing, the B-Cam stuff is critical for us to get to know, because we're going to get, if I picked up my email on my phone right now, there's going to be, at minimum, I haven't checked it today, at minimum, 10 emails that are from a coach pushing a player. And there's gonna be at least 1 or 2 every other day that's going to be from a coach wanting to break into college coaching. And so the competition out there and the competitive nature of getting into the business is difficult. That's why getting to know people, I think, is really, really important.
Over the years, we've had some of the best players in the world come from the city of Detroit. But I would say probably over the last 5 or 6 years, some of the best players are leaving high school in the city of Detroit to go out of state to play. This question is for anybody that wants to answer. Do you know why that's happening?
Keno, you want to go?
Well, I think, if I understood, it's players that are leaving the state, to prep schools or to other places. It's the same thing that, in some regards that we're dealing with players leaving our programs to go other places. And why is it happening? They're getting sold that there's something better out there than what they have. And we've got to be able to educate our players that we have constantly. We're going to be constantly recruiting the players that are on our own program. And just like the players in the state, they've got to be constantly educated of the opportunity they're getting here and why that's the best opportunity and how they're going to be able to be viewed by college coaches and get to the level that they want to, and that this is the best route for them. So I think you have to educate them even before they all of a sudden have that, they're able to excel, and show them that, and we can all be a part of that.
This is for any of the coaches who want to answer. With youth athletes, we discourage single sport specialization because of increase in injuries. By the time they get on later in high school and college, it's a little more appropriate. Their bodies are maturing. Do you guys encourage or discourage potential players from playing more than one sport in high school before they get to you?
I'll answer that because I played 2 sports at Bowling Green. I think they're still a Division I school, aren't they? Yeah. I want on my team a guy who played every sport. I want a quarterback. I want a defensive end. I want a linebacker. I want the toughest son of a bitch that's out there. That's who I want. And if they just played basketball their whole life, they're not. All right? And I had 3 boys, and all 3 of them, 2 of the 3 played Division I sports. And I would not let them do it. They had to play every sport but soccer. All right? I'm sorry if you're a soccer coach, but I think soccer at the youth level is all the moms can stand there and say their kid's running around doing nothing, but so I wouldn't let them play that sport. But I let them play, I made them play sports. And I didn't care. And it ended up, none of them became basketball players. One played football at LSU, one played baseball at Cincinnati. And if you have a kid that's saying that, have them call me. I'll help you, because I think it's wrong, just wrong to specialize in a sport. For a baseball player kid to play 200 games as a 12-year-old with what's going on today, I just think it's wrong. It's just a personal old man opinion.
Other questions?
Well, I was gonna, I actually like what Sam said, because I think this is the biggest problem we have right now, is people leaving. And so if I could, I'd go back to that just for a second, because I'll go back to the way it was and the way some of you are. I see Keith here and Stone, you've done it a lot, but I think you should do it with all of us, and I think you should do it at the University of Michigan too. I think if you can spend more time with them and get those kids to trust you, then they're not just jumping to the first thing and bringing them to games. You know, I know it's a pain sometimes, but getting them in a locker room or getting them there where they can see what the college game. You know, Cassius Winston for us right now, you know, I've put his name in and want him to take a look at what is out there for the NBA. But, you know, the first thing I told him is, you got to get down to a Piston game and see him up close and personal, you know. And I think if you spent time with your guys to, you know, reach out, I mean, those guys used to do that a lot. I'm not dating myself and I'm not insulting you, because some of you do it unbelievable. I mean, a lot of you guys have been up to our place. I know you've been to Michigan. You should be at Eastern, Oakland, Central, U of D, I mean, and Western. You should try to get them to experience different things, but at the same time, when you're riding there in that van, you're probably getting a relationship with that kid, so he just doesn't bolt at the first easy thing that's offered. I'm not getting into any of your old man crap, so I don't want to get into that next one, but that's what I feel about that, and I think it is a growing problem, and I think in this city, I've said all along, you know, I think it's been great what's happening in this city. We're getting some booming things that are going on, and if the best and biggest city in your state is not being successful, your state's not successful. And so we need Detroit to be good from a financial standpoint, we need it to be good from a business standpoint, we need it to be good from an athletic standpoint. Because I remember going to tournaments in the summer, or coming to our place and seeing the places packed where everybody feared the teams from Michigan. I think St. Cecilia had something to do with that, I really do. Did you play there? Yeah. You know, I mean, Magic still talks about it. He was up 2 weekends ago when we were in Washington, D.C., and somehow St. Cecilia came up, you know. So it wasn't just Detroit kids, everybody from everywhere. It was a stomping ground. I think we need to get back to that.
Just I want to touch back on, you know, Cam's, you know, question about his, you know, a high school coach is considered. I think Coach Hawkins said something that's extremely important. You have to get to know coaches in order to be considered. Now, I go back to when I was in high school, I was able to build a relationship with Coach Izzo and spend some time with him, and even spent some time with him at his house. Now, he recruited Maurice Ager, but through that recruitment, I was able to build a relationship with him. But not only that, you talk about Perry Watson, I developed a great relationship with. Tommy Amaker when he was at Michigan, Brian Ellaby. I would go down to Cincinnati twice a year to build a relationship with Bobby Huggins. I worked Rick Pitino's camp twice. Ben Holland when he was at Pittsburgh. So throughout high school, I made it my business to build relationships with coaches around the country. And I'm not just talking about coaches that recruited my players, but I took an initiative to get to know them. So when the time came up, whether it was assistant coach or it was a head coach, they were comfortable with me. And Coach Hawkins mentioned that riding in the car for 40 minutes or an hour recruiting, us, coaches, want to make sure they are with somebody that they're familiar with and they're around. I had 2 spots on my staff open up 2 years ago. And I ended up hiring 2 guys that had no college experience. But when they came into the interview process, obviously I knew they could be good recruiters, I knew they were good coaches, and I knew they would have great relationships with our players. But more importantly, the 2 to 3 years previous to those spots coming open, those guys made sure I knew them, and we built a relationship, and I was comfortable with those guys. Now, here in Detroit, and maybe around the state of Michigan, I'll also experience, and this is really, really important. When I was coming up and I was a high school coach, I started out at 22 years old. Right away, I was at Central High School, Crockett High School. So I was young and energetic and doing whatever we could do at our tenure at Central High School and Crockett High School to be successful and building those relationships. but everybody was more together at that time. Now, me and Steve Hall, Mark White, George Ward, and all of these great coaches, we had some great battles, right? And it was never personal. We were together. And I can remember when it was time for me to get an opportunity at Kent State, which I was familiar with Stan Heath, who was leaving as the head coach, and Jim Christian, who was the assistant, and fortunately enough, Antonio Gates was there, who I had a chance to coach in high school, which helped me land a job as well. But as we were, going through the process back then, when I was able to leave, it was a togetherness. When I was ready to make my jump to Kent State, all the coaches in Detroit were behind me. I could come back here and recruit and talk to them, and they were willing to help. Well, when I went through the process 2 years ago, everybody was against everybody. So what I learned was, okay, if I want to hire this guy, it's going to be 3 other guys in Detroit that's going to be pissed off at me, and they're not going to help. Because I help this one person, I may have 5 people that don't want to help me. So opposed to everything being together and everybody pushing and helping one another, it was more of an against situation, so I decided to go a different route. May not be no fault of anyone's, but what I'll tell you and advise you to do, if you want to get it to this business, this level, make sure you do a great job, not a good job, a great job of building relationships. Go up to Michigan State, go up to Oakland, go up to Detroit, Central Michigan, Western Michigan, the University of Michigan, and really spend some time. I don't know how many faces in the past 3 years, and I've been at Eastern Michigan for 8 years, I don't know of any consistent faces in this room that have come to Eastern Michigan 2 to 3 times a year and just sat in the practice, maybe attended a game, and maybe got to know me, my staff, and what we're about. And that's what it's really all about. And again, I don't know how much you guys go to Michigan State. Everybody wants to go see Michigan State. But go up there in October. I'm telling you, Coach Izzo has an open door policy. I experienced it when I was coming up. Tommy Amaker did the same thing for me. Perry Watson did the same thing. And I took advantage of those opportunities. So, and not just me. If you come and sit in my practice 3 or 4 times a year, you may learn something about the zone. You may learn something how we do breakdowns and how we teach our rebounding drills or our offensive execution. But more importantly, we're building a relationship. And even if it's not with me, Coach may have an open. Coach Hawkins may have an open. We all talk. So if your name come across his plate and he don't have a relationship with you, but I do, I can easily say, well, I had a chance to spend such and such time with this guy. I think he'll be a great guy for you if his name has come across your plate. But I think, in a nutshell, we need to make sure we're building relationships. And I did that at a very high level, and I continue to do so. For me to ever continue to have success, I still ask Coach Izzo for help. Believe it or not, I still call him. He pick up the phone. Murph, what you need, what you want, what you need now. Because I call on these guys. Coach Hawkins is the same way. I haven't needed Keno or Coach Kampe or Coach Davis as of yet. But these guys up here have been still helpful to me throughout my career. So I talk lifelong. It starts when you're young and you continue to build it. But I'm about 30, 40, 50-year relationships. I'm not that old, but it's the people that you come in contact with that will continue to help you be successful at all levels.
So we're going over time, but I think this is very valuable. Look, the Pistons aren't going to win tonight anyway, so if it's okay, Dan, can I have each of the coaches take 1 minute with a closing comment, whatever you're passionate about, whatever your message is. And Coach Hawkins, I'll put you on the spot if you want to go first. Maybe something about Coach Wooden, maybe.
Sure. Tim had talked to me about it before, but I did have the opportunity growing up in Southern California. I was the assistant director of Coach Wooden's camps, which basically meant for me for about a decade, my chief job was to pick up Coach Wooden in the morning, take him home in the afternoon. We were almost never alone. In the morning we were alone because it was early in the morning. It was a half-hour drive. In the afternoon we were never alone. Because somebody wanted to interview him, whether it be a coach, whether it be a reporter, whatever it may be. So I got to hear all those questions and all those answers for a decade, 25 days a year in the summer. And we try and base a lot of, I mean, there were a ton of questions. One of the things I shared with Lindsay in the interview ahead of time, I'll share with you now, because I could go on and on about Coach, but one day we were in the car and it was always strange because you never knew. All Coach Wooden would do is Coach would say, Steve, you're picking up Mike today. And that's all he wanted me to be able to address. I knew where he was gonna be. I had to pick him up on a certain corner at California Lutheran College, and then I would show up and say Mike, and then it'd be Mike Davis. I didn't know who it was at the time, but one day he told me, you're picking up Tom today. I said, okay. So I showed up, and it's Tom Landry, the coach of the Cowboys, and I'm driving down the 101 freeway with Tom Landry and Coach Wooden in the back of the van, and all I could think about is, Jesus, please don't let me crash. If I'm the guy that kills Tom Landry and John Wood, it's not going to play well at home. But in one of those conversations, because I could go to a million of them, but in one of those conversations, a reporter asked Coach Wooden, he said, Coach, do you think you could coach today's kids? He said, today's kids, they may have braids, saggy pants, tattoos, and I'd heard his answer before, and I thought, this guy's getting ready to get lit up, and he doesn't realize it. And he said, of course I could. Let me ask you something, young man. Do you think it was easy coaching during the Vietnam War? Do you think it was easy coaching during civil rights? He said, young people, their entire lives, your age, have been rebelling. It's what young people do. They call college transitional phase for a reason. Young men are in transition. They're trying to find themselves. At the same time they're trying to find themselves, they're trying to project confidence. And that's not an easy combination to get into. And then he went on to say, young man, let me ask you something. Did you wear bell bottoms when you were in college? What about mutton chops? Did you have long hair? Maybe mutton chops? So of course you did. That was the way you rebelled at that point in time in your life. It's what young people do, and it's your job as coaches to help negotiate and navigate those waters, to help these guys get ready for life after the ball is done bouncing. That's what we're all here to do. So I'd share that with you in terms of Coach Wood.
Very good. First of all, I'd like to just say this before I end. My son is a walk-on now, Coach. So he can play immediately. So I paid for his scholarship. Because that's his school. That's the first guy he asked me. I said, Dad, he didn't even offer me a scholarship. But I'd like to invite all you guys out to come to Detroit for practice, just come over and hang out. I'm always in the office. Matter of fact, right now, I don't even go in my office. I sit in the gym. Just hang out in the gym, and we can talk basketball, we can watch games, whatever you want to do. As far as touching on a coach's standpoint, it is true you have to have a relationship with the guy, but I'm a different type of coach. Any coach that ever worked for me, wherever I go, they go with me. If they don't want to go with me, then whoever worked for me before and went somewhere else can always come back. So my door is kind of like, if you've been with me and you go somewhere else, you can come back with me. If you're with me, good or bad, you're with me. And so that's just how I am. Because this is a hard business to get into. It's very, very difficult to be a college basketball coach. And I know how tough it is to be a college basketball coach. When I got fired a couple of years ago, I called a lot of people for a job, and they always said the same thing. Well, I understood. Trust me, I wasn't disappointed by any rejection that I got, but I was fortunate enough to get the Texas Southern job, and everybody that was on my staff at UAB could come with me to Texas Southern. In Texas Southern, I had two guys that didn't want to come, but I'm always taking the guys that have been with me. And if guys that have been with me somewhere else, they lose their job, they can come right back immediately and coach for me. So that's how I am. But please come by, hang out. Like I said, I talk about basketball. We just sit around, talk, and I'm always in there 24/7 from Monday through Sunday. I'm in the gym all the time. I'm really excited about being here in Detroit. Detroit is, I only came here for recruiting a long time ago. I had a couple of kids. I knew I wasn't going to get them, but I was always come up. But Detroit, the perception of Detroit is totally wrong. What people think, this is an unbelievable place. And I'm looking forward to doing some really, really good things here at Detroit. And I ask all you guys to come out. If I don't come to your gym, I don't believe in just going to a gym, just be hanging out in the gym, because I have players that play for me right now that I'm their dad. I make sure I coach them every single day. I'm with them all the time. That's why I said in the gym, making sure that the parents that gave me their kids, I'm working with them. But please come by Detroit Mercy anytime you want to come by. Thank you.
Yeah, I think the thing that I would leave you to is that, my greatest experience in becoming a coach and what shaped me was the experience that I had in college. And I wasn't, I was an average high school player, but my father was coaching at the University of Iowa at the time, and so I believed I was going to go into coaching. So I had the opportunity to be able to be a practice player with the team, but then to be in those same meetings with the team, but to also be in the same coaches' meetings with my father and the assistant coaches. And I think I really learned a lot to be able to hear what the pulse of the team was and then what the coaches were saying. And it was surprising a lot of times. But what I found out was that there wasn't ever a time that I remember that those players were complaining in the locker room about being coached too hard or being worked with or being asked to come in before practice or after practice to try to develop. But I heard every day from one of the players that felt like he was getting ignored, that felt like he wasn't getting the attention, that he wasn't getting coached. And it's something that I think is we don't always know as coaches when before practice is starting and you're kind of standing there, you might be talking with your assistant, you're kind of watching guys shoot, or you're spending that time to try to work with not necessarily the best player, but that player that's going to help you down the road. Something that we've tried to do, and we've had a lot of success with guys that you never know. It's like in recruiting, players that, a lot of recruits that we don't know some of those intangibles, but same thing is those players that you think coming into your year are going to be great players, great, you kind of know those, but some of the guys are going to make great strides that are going to continue to work if you're able to work with them. Appreciate you being here. Thank you very much.
For me, I think, at every level, and it starts at the, elementary, middle, and high school level, is educating our student athletes and students, and make sure they're able to communicate. Education is really important to me. I never would have got the opportunity, and I think it gets lost that, everyone up here has a college degree, whether it's a bachelor's, some guys may have their master's, but it's very important to go to school to graduate. It's extremely important. We talk basketball all the time. Without attaining your degree, it's going to be really tough for you to have any success in life. So for me at Eastern, this is my 8th season. We've graduated 32 out of 34 student athletes in an 8-year period. We had 2 guys that leave early that felt they had an NBA opportunity a couple years ago, and they decided to go work out somewhere else, and both of them were like 6 and 9 credits short of their degree. And I consistently, between myself and my staff, stay on them because I want a perfect graduation rate. But 32 out of 34 is a 96% graduation rate. I believe could be the highest in our conference. We have 1,000% APR. And Coach Hawkins mentioned, I believe, when the ball stopped bouncing. If these guys are lucky, they'll play professional basketball maybe 5 to 8 years after their college careers when they're about to turn 28, 29 years old. But then they have another 60 to 70 years to live life. And that's kind of what I prepare my guys for and talk to them a lot about. It's about getting your education, life after basketball. And just a quick story, I've been really, really fortunate. Obviously, I started a foundation here 4 years ago, the Rob Murphy Foundation, where I do a lot of giving back to the inner city. I respect what Horatio and his team continues to do, but I think that's important as well as giving back to your community. And if you can do that, continue to educate these guys at your level and get them prepared for our level, and continue to talk about the importance of graduation, I think that'll be helpful. All right. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
I'll go quickly. What you said about coming to practice, and you can come to somebody's practice and learn what not to do too. So, we're open anytime you want to come watch us. I get asked all the time how you survived at one place. They said I'm the third longest tenured, which is true. I've been the head coach for 35 years at Oakland, so I'm going to give you the three things, the three keys that I think have allowed me to survive. Number one, everybody wants to be great until they find out what they have to do to become great. It's my job as a coach, no matter what they think or do, is I promised them they'll be the best player they can be, and so never waver from that, even when they find out they don't want to do what they have to do to become great. That's number one. Number two, the players will never want to win as much as you want to win. You have to understand that. I've coached 100 and, you said 34, I think I have 109 or 10 that have played 4 years for me. Not one of them. And I've coached great kids, great players, 4 NBA players, At an Oakland, 4 NBA players is a lot of players. Not one of those kids ever wanted to win as much as I do. So I accept that and I know that, and it doesn't change how you coach. And then the third thing, and this is probably the most important one, never underestimate how screwed up the other team is too, all right? Because you think your team's screwed up. When you walk out there, never underestimate how screwed up they are, all right?
Well, I too, like everybody else here, and I'll back cleanup, is to thank all of you and Horatio and Tom, Dan, all the people that put this on. It's pretty cool that you can do this, and probably should be done even more and more and more, because these are the relationships you do get. I got out of this, relationships is the key. Whether it's in hiring, whether it's with your own students. And the one thing I've learned that I talk to my guys about, don't think your title gets you anything anymore. Don't think your title does it. You're the head coach, so you're in the Hall of Fame, so you won a national championship. So, I don't think any of those things matter to kids. With each kid, you've got to earn their trust. And kids don't trust people as much as they used to. That's not their fault, that's our fault. Ours, the adults, that's our fault. And spending time, and Murph is a great example to me, because different jobs that he's looked at, and I think I still make a call here and there, because he did spend a lot of time at our place, and he comes up a lot, and he brought a lot of kids up, and some of you guys do an incredible job of that. It's not that I appreciate it just because you bring them up, because some of the kids maybe aren't good enough to play, but they're good enough to play somewhere. And I would just say that if you could spend time, and it's a hard thing, none of us have enough of it, but if you could, and I would leave you with, every one of these places you should go. And that was a Judd Heathcote rule. Never closed the practice since I've been there to high school coaches. We go to a Final Four, everybody wants it buttoned up. And Mike, I'm sure you went through a Coach Knight, some other coaches. I talked to John Thompson when I was there. He buttoned up the hotel. He didn't. For some reason, he was a high school coach for 18 years. And he believed in a high school coach. So never closed the practice, never would close the practice. But guys come up and sit in on meetings. And I think Murph's right. If you could spend that extra time with us, it would probably come back to you in a lot of different ways. So I appreciate you all. I appreciate Tim, the job he's done. And our job, our goal, this state is that Willie back there? Willie, what in the hell didn't I get you? This state has produced some of the greatest players ever. Our state is responsible, and Detroit has been the leader in it, and maybe it's our goal and our job for all of us and all of you to get it back. And because I think you'd agree that Detroit's healthy, our state's healthy. Good luck. Tim, thank you.
Thank you. Before I close, this relates to the health of our basketball throughout the state. I don't get a chance to say thanks very often to some very special people. 6 years ago, I had a vision that I wanted to do something to help the state of Michigan with basketball. For the last 24 years, I've been the director of the Top 100 camp for the best players in the nation. There's a lot of career talk, there's a lot of integrity and character and getting guys ready for the NBA. And so with the help of a group here, we started the Michigan League 25. This will be our 6th year. And I just wanted to recognize some of the guys that are here that have really helped us. We talk about respecting referees, character and integrity, the importance of teamwork and leadership, a strong handshake, eye contact, love for your coaches in your school. And so, Dan, you've been a big part of it, and TJ Kelly, Ken Flowers, George Ward, Juan Rickman, Keith Guy, Ramsey Nichols, Rocky Buscemi, Steve Hall, Willie Burton's helped out. We've just had so much support. If I forgot any of you, I apologize, but I just wanted to say from the bottom of my heart how much we appreciate your support. We want to keep on doing that, okay? Horatio, great job. You do amazing work. Really proud to be affiliated with you. Dan and Tom and Deacon, your whole staff, fantastic. And I can't express my appreciation for you as coaches. I was pumping my fist when you were in his face. I love that. And I think more kids need tough love and they need direction. So I applaud you and want all of you guys to continue what you're doing. You're role models. We appreciate you. And on behalf of everybody, thank you very much.